I would imagine we would be looking to appoint a new CBN governor who would have a very good grasp of the linkage between financial markets and the economy. So essentially someone with a very sound understanding of economics. I'm not talking about theoretical economics now, but how to really drive economic growth. Because yes, the primary role of the central bank has been to achieve price stability and exchange rate stability. However, in modern economics, it's more now of economic growth, which is why, for example, in the Western economies and even some of the Asian economies, you see that the central banks played a key role in driving economic growth way beyond just fixation on inflation or price stability and exchange rate stability. So personally, I would love to see someone who would be a pro-economic growth person and actually have a long-term view for inflation, exchange rate, and obviously economic growth. And I say that because with a frontier economy like ours, I personally believe we need to do that trade-off between economic growth and inflation, because the truth is that economics has made us understand, various studies have shown us that for you to achieve sustainable economic growth over the long term, in the initial years you probably will suffer some inflation, partly because of the result of having low interest rates, i.e. that means your companies, your SMEs will be able to access funds at sustainable rates over the long time, low and sustainable rates over the long time, thereby creating employment and domestic production, which will drive growth over the medium to long term. So in that short term period, maybe 3 to 5 years, you probably would have inflationary effects as a result of the low interest rates. However, as production within the economy increases, and because the interest rates are low, which essentially means you've actually deflated some of the costs of the factors of production within the economy, you see inflation decrease over time. We've seen that in China, in Brazil, in Russia, and in India. I mean, several studies have been done to that effect. So that would be a principal quality I will be looking out for in whoever is going to be appointed as the new central bank governor. And like I mentioned earlier, it's also very important for us to appoint someone also with a very good grasp of international financial markets and the linkage within financial markets, such that you actually drive the financial markets alongside the banking system, and thereby be able to create a very robust regulatory platform, such that as the banking sector is growing, the financial markets are also growing alongside, and then overall the broader economy is better off for it.
It's very interesting, because when I posed the question to the Deputy Governor of the CBN, Kingsley Moghalu, at the conference at the hotel weeks ago, his response to me was that the Central Bank of Nigeria is a developing country central bank, it's not the Bank of England or the ECB. But when you look at the decision by the Fed day before yesterday to continue tapering, to continue no tapering, to continue stimulus program of $85 billion bond buying program month on month in America. Yes. When you look at the reaction from the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, when you look at reactions from the N11, and look at reactions from Middle Eastern economies, you see that America still has a central role in global central banking, right? What America does is very much in the picture and is like a springboard for reaction by other central banks, right? You look at McCartney moving the British, the Bank of England, from a core monetary policy stance where it's so focused by Mervyn King as being on using only those white, let me call it those office monetary policy tools to maintain stability, and not really using the Bank of England to inject growth into the system, right? When you look at the fact that right now, the Bank of England has continued £375 billion a month of bond buying in the UK, also quantitative easing, to try to inject stimulus into the economy like America has been doing, and has the FTSE 100 doing very well. Yeah. You see that central banks are moving from being reactive to being proactive, which is very good. But the fear again is When you come to Nigeria, when you look at Israel, like you mentioned, when you look at India, you look at India that is trying to mop up the excess glut of gold in its economy. You look at it's trying to shrink the demand for gold in India. It's trying to shrink the use of gold as a means of exchange in India. When you look at the Bank of England, like you said, Makani being the first non-British to become the governor of the Bank of England. When you look at the U.S. Federal Reserve, and then you come to South Africa, you come to Brazil, you come to Russia, India, China, and then you come to Nigeria. The biggest question for me is, how does the CBN focus on monetary policy?
We have the MPC committee that meets and then take decisions and all that.
How does the CBN focus on monetary policy and be effective at the same time?
Okay, effective.
In the sense that, look, you have a CBN that is handicapped. In my view, you have a CBN that is handicapped.
The current Nigerian CBN?
Yes, because you have the CBN trying to fight inflation, which is the biggest threat to national growth, with monetary policy tools that are like, in my words to the deputy governor of the CBN weeks ago, was firefighting. How do you have a building burning, and then your only solution to quench that burning building, instead of calling fire service, is to use a cup, put it in a ditch of water, take the cup, and pour the fire? How do you do that?
It's not sustainable, not achievable.
It's impossible. How do you have the CBN fight inflation, which is a structural problem, from a monetary policy stance? The problem of inflation in Nigeria is multilateral. Look at Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala reacting to Fitch Ratings, Moody's, and S&P on BB minus, stable. She's saying that a lot of growth now is coming from non-oil sector, telecoms, banking, retail, agriculture, power, the privatization of the power sector. When you look at that, you see that there are structural issues that has to be tackled in the economy. The problem of inflation in Nigeria is not a monetary policy problem, it's a structural problem. The CBN is too limited to fight inflation. So the CBN's answer, in a way, is to set up development centers around Nigeria to teach young people how to start businesses and give them soft loans through the Bank of Industry. I was in Delta State some time ago in Sapele, and I was talking with a farmer, a young guy, who so far has received 9.7 million naira from the federal government. And I was impressed that the federal government is actually giving people money. And they actually employed an auditing company in the UK to go around the country to check and confirm that these people are using the money for the purpose that they said they are using it. But back to the point. The point is that the biggest question for who the next CBN governor is going to be are multilateral. Number one, how do you encourage the federal government to put pressure on structural reforms? Number two, how do you increase the number of loans to the private sector? I remember the time when the governor of the central bank came up with a proposal to cut lending rates by 30%, and how the bankers committee crashed it because they felt that it was bad for their business. And the complaint they kept giving was that the cost of doing business is too high. But I beg your pardon, when you have 2% management fee on loans, you're saying that your cost of doing business is high. Is your cost of doing business not supposed to be from your management fees? Right? So you see the banks making a lot of money from lending, even if they are bad loans on their books. How do you have the CBN encourage the government to allow them to cut down lending rates to ensure that businesses have more access to loans? How do you create a stable foreign exchange regime? How do you create an exchange rate mechanism where people can hedge the fluctuations in currency? How do you reduce the gap between the official market and the parallel market, which is a very, very big issue in Nigeria? And the reason why there is no political will to do it is because a lot of people in high places are profiting from the scam going on in the system. These are multilateral issues that has to be answered by whoever is going to be the successor of Governor Lamido, Sanusi Lamido, or whoever the committee that is saddled with the responsibility of choosing a successor to him is? These are the tough questions they need to answer. We need to get off dealing with soft issues and leaving the tough ones undone.